Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And Zachary, it's very nice to have you with us here. We'll see how how well my voice holds out here. But I really do enjoy these calls because I think I'm one of the people that were originally into crypto for the tech, maybe. But I've really been enjoying these calls where we feature many of our DeFi integrations because it's really starting to teach me a little bit about the business use cases. And I'm really excited to kind of learn a little bit more about Flashstake. Zachary, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what Flashstake is?
I can definitely do that, and I also agree with you. It's so fun. That's what keeps me in crypto, is kind of learning every single day what people are doing with this technology. So excited to give a little background about myself and what we're building. Also, either Maverick or Ken, if you get the chance, I actually just replied to this Twitter space with, we called it the mega thread. It's basically like everything. I know these Twitter spaces are audio, but for people to click around, if that is able to be pinned, I think that'll help some other people listening as well. But yeah, my quick backstory: 2017, the same day that I proposed to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and she's actually 8.5 months pregnant. So we're celebrating that. The same day I did that, I quit my 9 to 5 day job, and I have been in crypto ever since. Completely obsessed. A lot of people have their own crypto rabbit hole journey. Well, that's when I kind of came in 2017. 2018, I helped grow a crypto marketing agency. That was a lot of fun. 2019, we launched something called Block Zero Labs. And so what we're here talking about today, Flashstake actually was born out of Block Zero Labs. Block Zero Labs is a decentralized venture studio. We create a bunch of cool experimental projects, and the coolest one that we think that has been built out of it today is called Flashstake, and that's what I'm excited to talk about today and what we're doing with Rocket Pool. But in as short as I can put it, anybody listening to this call, you're probably earning yield in some part of crypto somewhere, whether that's through Rocket Pool and just by holding a token, which is pretty cool, or maybe you're actively earning yield in Aave, Compound, Uniswap, wherever it is. The awesome part of crypto is how permissionless it is for anybody to earn this new form of income. One of the trade-offs, though, that we wanted to attack is that whenever you earn yield in crypto, you're basically earning on a block per block or maybe a day per day basis. So if you're earning, let's just make up an example, $1 a day, over the course of a year, you're going to earn $365. So the inspiration for the Flashstake protocol was, what if you could earn that $365 today without having to wait the full year? And so we kind of threw around this term called flash staking actually a few years ago, and our community loved it. They started thinking about all the possibilities of what this enables, as you said, Ken, in kind of real world business applications. What does this mean not only for individuals, but how can projects leverage this who have treasuries? And so from that inkling of an idea of instant upfront yield, the idea of not having to wait for your yield and money to grow, Flashstake was born. We've been building on it now for a few years, actually, but I would say very seriously in about last year or so. We launched around the time of the whole FTX debacle. So for those of you who remember in Q3 last year of the FTX meltdown, we kind of launched our current version of the protocol and just been growing it month per month, keep launching new strategies and new opportunities. So I'm going to take a pause there because I can get kind of excited and go a little too far into the weeds. But Ken, that's kind of our short end of our story here with Flashstake.
Oh, excellent. Well, maybe, I spent some time kind of reading up on the protocol like I do for all of these episodes. But maybe walk me through this one, or walk the community that's listening to this Twitter space through the process. I understand, I guess it's the rETH token that is going to be integrated into your protocol. And let's say, just to make it simple, that I had 100 rETH. Or maybe 100 ETH, or however it goes. But walk me through, like, how would I use your protocol, and what do I get in the process of interacting with your protocol?
Yeah, let's. I love examples. So, and also I'm very visual. So, if anybody wants to follow along on what I'm saying here, you can actually go to app.flashstake.io, and it's a really cool front end calculator. So, if you want to, you don't have to connect your wallet or do anything like that, but you can actually play around with what this is going to look like on Thursday whenever we're launching. You're going to be able to see what it looks like for an rETH holder or an ETH holder's perspective. So, walking through from beginning to end, I think you said let's start with the 100 ETH example because it's always fun to think, what if I just had 100 ETH laying around, right? So what you basically can do is you take that ETH, you can bring it to our DApp, app.flashstake.io, and you can choose one, the quantity. So we've already done that here. Number two, step number two, you choose the duration of time in which you want to claim the future yield of that asset today. So in our protocol, you can stake actually down to the minute if you want. Given gas fees, that's not going to make a lot of sense, but you could stake down to the minute if you want. And then depending on the strategy that you decide to choose, you can stake, for example, 3 months. So a few of our strategies have it to where you can actually stake for 2 years into the future, which is pretty cool. So what you're doing when you're selecting a time is basically you're saying, okay, how much of the yield would be generated over the next 3 months? What I'm going to do is I'm going to flash stake my asset, my 100 ETH, for 3 months. What it's doing is your 100 ETH is going to be safely deposited and earning yield in Rocket Pool. And then what's actually happening behind the scenes, this is where it gets a little technical. And just to remind everybody on the call, you don't have to know that this is going on behind the scenes if you don't want. But basically, you're minting a yield token. In our system, this is called FYRETH. And this is basically representing the yield that your rETH will basically accrue and yield over the course of 3 months. And it mints you that. It sends that to your wallet. And if you decide to sell that yield token, it's basically like you're selling your future yield for money today. So in this example, take 100 ETH, we'll choose half a year, so 6 months just for simplicity. And what it's actually going to do is it's going to mint these F tokens, these FY tokens, and it's going to sell them. And so let's assume that the interest rate is, I don't know, 10% to make it easy. That would be basically 5 ETH would be sent back to your wallet immediately. So now you have 5 ETH in your wallet. You can do whatever you want with that. So this is where kind of the possibilities of how this protocol can be used and leveraged is pretty cool. And then your principal is still accruing yield. Now you are giving up the rights to that 100 ETH and the yield it's producing because you already got money today. But in 6 months from now, you can withdraw basically the value of ETH that you originally staked. So the last thing I'll say here is although you can wait 6 months if you want to wait 6 months, you can also return basically your yield if you would like to. You can return the yield that you got, and you can withdraw your principal at any point in time. So one of the biggest misconceptions is, oh no, I locked for 6 months, I can't get that money back. Well, actually how our protocol works is you always have 100% control and access to that original ETH that you put in at any point in time. You just have to pay back the yield. And what's really cool is the amount of yield that you have to pay back. For example, in this example is 5 ETH is what we said. It linearly decreases to 0 over the course of 6 months. So let's just, I'm generalizing here, but let's just say after 3 months, you're like, oh man, I'm tired of this. I want to get my original principal out. Well, all you have to do is, for example, this is a generalization, is give back 2.5 ETH or half of your original yield, and you can unlock your principal. So it linearly decreases to 0, and then of course at the end of the 6 months, you now have your principal back, and you still have your upfront yield, that 5 ETH that you got at the beginning. So hopefully that gives a little clarity. Is there anything I can clarify, kind of rolling that out? It's a little hard to do audio, but hopefully that helped.
Yeah, let me just see if I could ask a couple of questions. I guess one of the questions is, do I always get the same token that I deposit? So, for instance, if I deposit rETH into the protocol, at the end of that wait period, the time lock, the 6 months, or if I pay the interest earlier, do I always get returned that amount of rETH I deposited, or does it, is it dependent upon market conditions or trading conditions and some liquidity pool?
Yeah, it's it's a really good question because when we're creating these strategies for different protocols like Rocket Pool, they each work a little differently. So we have to find like the perfect, optimal workaround to make it best for the user. So as it currently stands, I also see I think our CTOs here in the audience. The user would get back wETH at the end of the stake. So the best way to look at it is like whenever you flash stake rETH, you're basically locking in the wETH value at that point in time, and then you're receiving the upfront yield on top of that paid in wETH. So in this model, how it's currently working is that rETH, you'll at the end of your stake you'll receive back wETH, and the upfront yield will be paid in wETH as well.
Okay, excellent. And then is there like a loss of yield? Like for instance, let's say the Ethereum staking, estimation is about, maybe, let's say for rETH holders is, let's say, 5% a year. And if I use the Flashstake protocol and I actually time deposited for a 1 year lockup, in that instant yield I get when I deposit that 100 ETH of rETH, am I going to get that full 5% estimated yield, or is the fact that I'm getting paid immediately, do I only get a fraction of that estimated 5% yield for Ethereum staking? Like, do you only pay out 4%, or is there some cut that you take in that process?
Yeah, really good questions. So I'll start with by stating that the free and open market actually dictates the interest rates. So if Rocket Pool's native interest rate is 5%, it's possible that when you flash stake, that the upfront yield could be at 4%, at 9%, at 12%. It actually completely depends on open market dynamics. For the launch, it's actually expected right now, because we're having some promotional emissions right now using our Flash token. The interest rate's actually going to be probably in the 10 to 15% range for the early users. But I think the underlying question here is that a lot of people get kind of tripped up on is interest rates are volatile. And whenever you get upfront yield, it's like, I'm not taking that volatility anymore. So who's taking that? Who's taking that risk and reward of interest rates going up and down and all around? Well, basically, in our protocol, as I mentioned kind of a little earlier, there's this FY token, this FY rETH token that has ownership of your future yield. Those holders individually basically take the upside and the downside of interest rates going up and down over the next 3 to 6 months. So you, as a staker, you don't have to worry about interest rates going up and down. You're going to know exactly whenever you flash stake how much money you're going to have today, how much money you're going to have in 6 months from now. There's zero chance of liquidation. The protocol is always 100% collateralized, so it's not like it's taking the money and then borrowing from somebody else or doing some Robinhood type stuff. So your principal is always your principal. I think your maybe third question in there, if I'm getting these right, is protocol fees. So the only protocol fee that's taken is on those FY tokens, on the yield redemption tokens. There's a 5% flash stake protocol fee that's taken. So what this means is basically, let's say you do that 100 ETH and you are supposed to get, let's just say 10 ETH of upfront yield. Basically, it'll take 0.5, or it'll take 5%. So it'll take 0.5 ETH, and that goes to basically our protocol. So that is taken automatically. whenever you play with the calculator on the front end, that's already removed from the equation. So you don't have to think about like what the fee is. It's already removed out of there. So on the front end, it's basically what you see is what you get for the amount of yield that you're going to have. Hopefully that helps. I think you asked a series of questions. Did I miss any in there?
No, I think you're doing a great job kind of illustrating it. And I think what I'm hearing is that, one way to interact with the protocol is to actually deposit my rETH, right? It's a yield bearing asset. And what you'll do is you'll pay out a one-time payment at the very beginning based upon market conditions as to what that yield is, right? At the end of that time lock period, I still can recover my deposit in its entirety, and I get to keep that one-time payout on the yield. And what I forego is any a yield that may be greater than or less than what that initial payout was, right? But it
Yeah.
but it seems like that there must also be like a trading pool on the back end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that another way people can contribute? Do they invest or provide liquidity pooling into that trading pool for that conversion to set that interest rate?
Yes, yes. So there's two primary ways. Well, I guess let's break these down. There's three different primary ways to participate depending on your goals. And by the way, I'm not sure if you guys can see in the audience, there's this F logo, that's the Flashstake logo. Maybe we can get them on the stage. But basically, if you click on that profile, and all of this is laid out on the, I think the pinned post there. But basically, there's three different users. So we've already laid out the user number one here, which is the Flashstake user. They want certainty. They want instant upfront yield. They don't want to worry about all the crazy volatility of interest rates. The other user is the person who does want interest rate volatility, and those would be the FY token holders. So you can get those actually if you just want to lock in rETH and mint these FY tokens, you can do that. And basically, you're just speculating on interest rates. However, if you do that, there's a third option, which you alluded to here, is liquidity providers. So if you actually pair that yield token up with the rETH, you're now a liquidity provider. And anytime somebody does a flash stake, you're actually going to be earning trading fees. And on top of that, right now, actually just a few minutes ago, we had another liquidity pool activated, basically. You're earning some Flash, our native token Flash rewards. So it's pretty, there's lots of tokens that are being distributed for this first month to kind of get things off the ground. We don't expect those rewards to last forever, but they are going right now. But you're exactly right. Those LPs are basically, they're taking the counterparty. So the last analogy that I'll give is basically Uniswap. If you're familiar with Uniswap, they basically created a marketplace between people who want to buy assets and sell assets. And what Flashstake has done is created a marketplace for people who want yield now and people who are willing to basically wait for their yield or speculate on that yield. And so that's what we've done, is created this marketplace. So you're exactly right that the counterparty here, these liquidity providers, are susceptible to interest rates going up and down. And their basic bet is that the fees that they're going to generate will more than make up for that if interest rates do go down. So yeah, that's the outline of it.
Oh, perfect. I want to ask a follow-up on that. I did invite the individual that's shown as Flashstake to also be a speaker. If you want to accept that invite, you can come up on the stage here. But Zachary, so back to that kind of liquidity pool providing, because one of the interesting things is one of our community members, ahead of the show, we're kind of doing some due diligence and research. And one of the concerns that I think, if I'm understanding what was expressed, is that staking on Ethereum is somewhat, maybe I would call a predictable APY, meaning that, the amount of consensus layer rewards is very predictable, with some factors from growth and staking. Execution layer rewards, there's a little bit of volatility there, but once it starts averaging out over a large pool, like the number of validators that Rocket Pool has, it too starts to become a little bit more stable with less volatility. And one of the things that this individual kind of pointed out is that I guess the liquidity range, or the trading range that was provided in the pool, seemed to be maybe a little disjointed over some reasonable estimates about what our yield is. And I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about that, about how do you actually set those kind of trading ranges on the liquidity pool, and what happens if those, I recognizing this is the first time you're launching it and we actually don't know what the market is going to determine. But what happens if it goes either way? Like, for instance, if the actual interest is greater than what the payout is, or if the actual amount of yield that the underlying Rocket Pool token earns, if it's less than the amount of payout, how does that affect liquidity providers?
Yeah, another great question. So taking one step back, there's currently three different liquidity pool options that you have as an LP. So kind of, I'm not what's that children's story where it's like too hot, too cold, just right. So you can kind of choose your risk reward appetite. So depending on what APY you feel comfortable with as an LP, you can basically choose that. So the three different ranges, at the low end, or what we're considering the low band right now, is basically a 4 to 8% APY. So that means anytime there's a flash stake between the 4 to 8% APY, that person's going to be earning trading fees along the way. There's a mid band. I think it's 6 to 12% APY. And as I stated before, anytime there's a range between that, and I think what this person is referring to is this high band. It's this 10 to 15% APY. So rewards are going to each and every one of those LPs, and the market will basically choose which risk reward profile that they want to have. So let's just assume that for a second, I'm in this mid range. I'm in a 6 to 12% APY. If the APY of on the protocol for flash staking is above 12%, basically just like any liquidity provider position, I'm going to be 100% in rETH. If the interest rate goes between those, I'll have some combination of rETH and FY rETH tokens. And then if the interest rate goes below 6%, that LP, because they're in that range, will have basically holding 100% of the FY rETH tokens. So that's kind of the choose your own path destiny. It seems like because the high range right now, which we currently view as a launch promotional type of liquidity pool that we don't expect to stay around for a long time. We hope it doesn't stay around, because that would, in our opinion, mean that the protocol is not very efficient, capital efficient. So the reason for doing that is whenever we actually previously launched a Lido strategy, the APY in the early days, at least for the first month or so, it was hovering around this 10 to 11% APY at the beginning. And so that's what we found through historical data. In addition to that, then the underlying APYs have increased since then. So it's very possible that whenever you LP, as if you LP anywhere, you should understand kind of what you're getting into. So if you, I guess to summarize here, depending on where you think the interest rates are going to go, might dictate which one of those pools that you want to choose. And we like to look at it generally as the highest range has the highest chance of impermanent loss, and it has the highest rewards that are being paid out. Medium range has about average, and then the lowest range has the lowest risk and also the current lowest reward. So we kind of let the market decide which path they want. But just to close it here, it is very, very, very important that if you're an LP, not just in Flashstake, but anywhere, yeah, you know where your liquidity is going and what it's providing.
Yeah, fully agree with that, and thank you for the explanation. I think that's very helpful. A couple of last questions here as we kind of wrap up here, but I noticed that you were on a few of the layer twos. Can you talk a little bit about that, and like which layer two are these pools going to be created on, or are they on all layers, and where does somebody go to actually kind of interact with the protocol?
Yeah, it's been so fun to see the battle of the layer twos, and each kind of getting their own culture. It's so interesting. You can go into the optimism versus the arbitrum community and just get different feelings about both of them. So we currently have some liquidity of our own native token on Arbitrum. We also have a Flash, a GLP strategy from GMX on Arbitrum. And then on Optimism, we have a USDC strategy. But for Rocket Pool specifically, made the decision just because it's where the meat of users are right now, obviously to stay on the mainnet, and that comes with some gas, trade-offs that you guys, everybody, it's really hard to avoid. Be on the lookout. We are actually looking. I guess I'll do a little pre-announcement here. We have finalized this. We haven't finalized how much, but to actually do some gas reimbursement for the users, at least for the first users of the rETH strategy. Now, how much is going to be reimbursed? And all that will be posted probably in the next day or two. But getting back to your original layer 2, yeah, the Rocket Pool is going to be a layer 1 focused, and we do have some layer 2 strategies if and when they fit. We try to make those as well.
Okay, and you foreshadowed a little bit about my next question, which is the incentives. Can you mentioned it just briefly, but do you have a thought as to what you're going to incentivize? Is it the actual getting your Flash yield returned, or is it providing liquidity that you're incentivizing? Are you incentivizing it with your token, or are you doing it with the RPL token? Have you reached out to the IMC to kind of co-incentivize this, or what are your thoughts around this area?
Yeah, I really wish we could pin some things here at the top of the Twitter Spaces so people can just click on it. But there's one thread in particular that lays out the 4 different ways in which you can earn yield through this launch. So number 1, we call it the early bird kind of campaign, and it's pretty cool. So if you're one of the first Flash stakers of Rocket Pool when we launch this on Thursday, the first 5 people to Flashstake 5 rETH, the first 10 people to Flashstake 10 rETH, and the first 20 people to Flashstake 20 rETH are each going to be getting some incentives for that. There's also another cool, we call it King of the Hill. So basically every single day, the person who flash stakes the most rETH for that given day is going to get some incentives. So that's another cool thing we're doing. Number 3 would be the liquidity providers. So there are 3 different pools with 3 different incentives on there that you can provide in those medium, low, and high range. And then the 4th one that maybe everybody on this call should be able to do if they want to, is for content creators. So if you're really good at creating videos, educational content, even memes or GIFs, we've allocated some rewards for content creators, and there's some instructions for that as well. Now, all of these rewards are paid out in one of 2 tokens, or you could actually earn both of them. That's Flash, which is our native token, which is, I can go into detail maybe the utility of that if it helps, but the thing that I think this audience specifically would get interested in, we have this token idea. So we're like, how do we get the Rocket Pool community really rallied around wanting to make this successful? So what we did is we created a token called rFlash. And basically what rFlash is there's only 100 of these tokens. And if we hit our goal, and our goal for this launch campaign is 5,000 rETH, if we're able to hit this goal, this KPI, then these rFlash will be unlocking, each of them will be unlocking 10,000 Flash tokens. So if you're familiar with like success or KPI-based tokens, that's basically what it is. There is a minimum value as well to these, so they're basically each worth 1,000 Flash each. And so those 100 rFlash tokens are content creators, LPs, and Flash stakers can all earn those as well. So those are the 4 basic ways that you can earn tokens. And then I think your last question there was about these committees. I've had a few brief conversations. Jasper has been super helpful with kind of getting the lay of the land, and we really wanted to, before we made an official proposal, is to understand the goals of the committees better. So, for example, adding liquidity to rETH is, of course, a North Star that's important to you guys. And then some other things. So we kind of look at this launch as like a proof of concept to see if the Rocket Pool community even finds what we're doing interesting. And then based on the signal of this, probably use it as a case study to maybe make a larger, maybe co-incentivized collaboration with the actual committees and some type of co-mingling of rewards there. But yeah, we just wanted to be very thoughtful before we made a proposal. But we would love nothing more than to get to that point where whenever we do that, we have kind of the backing of some data to say, hey, your community really likes this idea of not waiting for their yield. And we think if we make this amount of rewards possible for this amount, we can drive this much liquidity and this much TVL to Rocket Pool. So we're going to learn a whole lot probably over the next month.
Yeah, well, one of the things I certainly invite you to do is to come into our Discord, especially the trading channel. It's kind of our community channel, and to cross-post and share a lot of those threads that you've posted to this Twitter space. So that way a lot of folks in the community can do their own research and really try to evaluate the protocol, the risks and the rewards in there. And but what about if somebody has questions? We certainly can take questions right now on the call, but later on, if they have questions, what's the best way to get a hold of you or somebody in the protocol where they could learn more?
Yeah, so I think if you click the Flashstake logo here, we have like one of those link tree style things where Discord would be best. That's where we have most of our community there. We've even created a channel in our Discord called Rocket Pool specifically for the next month. So we've had some good conversation in there as well. So that would be the place to interact. My DMs are always open. But with a baby on the way, they don't always get responded to, at least in these next few weeks. So, and then also to mention, yeah, I really like how you guys, I think we've been inspired by how your Discord is structured. I really like how you guys have like the 1, 2, 3. So I've been using that the last few days to make sure that the information is distributed in the proper way in the trading channel and kind of with the submission process. But yeah, that's where to connect with us now would be Discord. We'd love to see if you do join. The best way to we'd love to hear is like how you heard about it. Was it on this Twitter space? Was it somewhere else? And that really helps us connect with new community members as we grow.
Oh, excellent. And Mav, I'm not seeing any questions either in the trading channel or anybody with their hands up here. Maybe if you look as well too. But Zach, are there any last things that you feel is important for us to know about Flashstake that we haven't covered that you feel is important for the community to know?
I saw Maverick came unmuted there. Maverick, I didn't know if you had something to say, but I guess what I would encourage the most is if you don't have to connect your wallet or do anything, but because we are basically the first users of Flashstake on Thursday's launch, just get familiar with the UI UX. We put a lot of effort into making it as simple as possible. So just going to app.flashstake.io and just click around, play with the durations, play with the tokens, and then eventually on that drop down on Thursday, you will see rETH in there as well. So yeah, that would be it. Is sometimes with Flashstake, it's a little the first friction point is like, oh, this is too good to be true. How does this work? So dive into the threads that we've created, dive into the documentation, and then if you're not that technical, just dive into the user interface and kind of play with that. I think that would be my only suggestion for anybody listening.
Sounds good. I would just add that I did at least try to pin. I can see from my side. I think we've got 7 or so tweets up here for everyone to reference as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for some reason, maybe it's my phone. I'm not seeing them, so it's probably just this Android. I literally almost bought an iPhone just so I could have better Twitter Space experience. But yeah, if you got it up there, thank you for doing that, Maverick.
Well, Zachary, it's been a pleasure chatting with you a little bit here. I look forward into reading and learning a little bit more about Flashstake, and I certainly invite you to stay on the rest of the call if you like, but we'll probably transition it to talk a little bit about Rocket Pool because it seems like there's always something going on in our space. But it's been a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will be jumping off the stage, but listening here. But thanks again for having us, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.
All right. So obviously, everybody, I've been kind of fighting a little bit of a head cold here and sore throat, but so I haven't been quite all that active in Discord. But Mav, it's a pleasure always to chat with you a little bit more. And sounds like the only thing that people are talking about in the Discord these days or on Twitter Space is something about Ledger. And somebody said I should ask you about it.
Yeah, and unfortunate timing because I don't think we're talking about the possibility of a rocket pool integration, or at least not anymore. Before we get to that, though, we have had a request to speak. So we have Evelyn.eth up here on the stage as a speaker. Do you have a question?
Hi, yeah. Hi, guys. I tried multiple times to join this space and Twitter would not allow me. I don't know what else I need to do other than paying for that blue check mark to have a decent user experience. But thanks for setting up this space. I appreciate that. And since I missed a bunch of the conversation, can somebody please summarize what would be the difference between Flashstake and the Aave email pools that Mark talked to Wack about recently in an interview, in the sense of using rETH to, get a loan that you can use again for something else?
Sure. I don't know if Zachary or anyone else from the Flashstake team is still listening and would like to help to provide an answer. I will invite you guys back up to speak just in case. But in the meantime, I think to better explain what Aave Emo does, that is considered something more like, I guess, a leveraged position that you might hold on a centralized exchange. So it's using the ability to borrow additional funds against your collateral to increase your exposure to an asset, in this case rETH. So from a given amount of rETH, say 10 ETH worth, you can borrow through eMode, do it in a pretty efficient way with relatively low fees. And because rETH obviously pays out rewards, as we know, by price appreciation, by kind of leveraging up in this way, you can get exposure to more rewards. The obvious downside being that just like a leveraged position, there is a liquidation risk. I recall seeing some commentary, and everyone should obviously do their own research, but something like a 3% price move would be enough to close out a position. So, as with most things, increased risk does come with increased reward. So, this is potentially more somewhat of a degen play, although in the grand scheme of things, you could certainly make the case that it's not the highest risk option out there. And I do see Zachary is back up on stage, so if you maybe want to finish off the second half of this answer or add some more context about Flashstake in particular.
Yeah, you basically answered it, so I won't spend too much time. But on Flashstake, one of the biggest misconceptions that we have is it's actually not a loan. You're not borrowing. You don't have any debt. So as Maverick mentioned, if you are looking for like huge leverage, if you want to get more exposure to a certain asset, Flashstake is actually not a good option currently. So with Flashstake, at the end of the 6 months, or whenever you do your duration, you know exactly how much money you're going to get back, and it's not a loan or a debt. It's actually giving you, think of it more like an advance on your yield. So that's probably the biggest difference. No liquidation risk or anything like that.
All right, awesome. Hopefully that helped to explain.
Got it. Yeah, it makes sense. I'll read up on the docs. Just wanted to get the kind of the high level difference. Appreciate it.
And I'm sure Discord, as per usual, will be able to help with some more explanations if you need it. But yeah, otherwise, we'll go back to you, Ken, and the second half of this Twitter space.
Yeah. For a guy that has been out of the loop for the past couple of days, what's the TLDR with Ledger? Is it just Rocket Pool, or is it Ledger in the? Why is all of crypto talking about Ledger right now?
Man, I'm kind of thinking whether I should say anything, only because last night for me it was changing back and forth as people were trying to figure out exactly what's going on, and the fact that the discussion is in full swing now, as I woke up relatively early for this call, kind of suggests that maybe there's still a bit of uncertainty out there. To sum it up, as I understand it, the point of Ledger, right, is to add security, to provide a layer of security, to prevent a potential malicious actor from gaining access to your funds. Obviously, that makes sense. And part of the way that Ledger does this is to make sure that your seed phrase is not kind of exposed out to the wider world where it could get potentially intercepted. And they've added a new functionality, which is, as I understand, opt-in, that provides some kind of social recovery. And how this works is Ledger will essentially send your seed phrase out there in separate pieces to be stored, and should you need to, it can be recombined to gain you access to your funds again. So this obviously raises the question, if there is this functionality that can be enabled with the flick of a switch, so to speak, without needing to physically change everything within the ledger, does this mean that it actually exists in all ledgers, and potentially is a security flaw? If someone malicious goes to the people who hold these parts of your seed, can they force them to hand them over, recombine it, access your funds? A lot of question marks, really, and a lot of uncertainty, and pretty much the opposite that you would want from something that's trying to keep your funds secure. So, yeah, as I say, at this stage, maybe there were some developments overnight, but it does sound like there is still some uncertainty. I think maybe pitchforks have been up and down and back up again, but probably what is a better place to discuss this further is the Friday Chit Chat, which I have just loaded a few hours ago back into our list of upcoming events, which is about 10 or so long now, and we can talk about them later on. But probably a better place to have a more wide-ranging discussion. And by then, I expect we'll have some more details out. But from what I saw on, I'm guessing it was the Ledger subreddit, there were a few downvotes out there, a few people potentially unhappy with, at the very least, the way Ledger kind of handled this, potentially saying that maybe this functionality could be part of a separate device. Obviously, social recovery as an idea, as a technology, can be potentially very useful. It just comes down to the implementation of it. So, yeah.
And then refresh my memory here. There was some rumors, and maybe it was announced or not announced yet, about a possible integration with them. Is that still going forward, or did I miss the announcement on that? I don't know if you heard me there, or if that silence is telling or not. Oh, Mav, did we lose you?
Can you hear me, Ken?
Yeah, I got you now. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, all good.
One follow-up question I was just going to ask on that is, did we ever announce any integrations with the Ledger wallet for staking directly within their software?
So, short answer is no. but when you are building open source stuff, there's always information out there for people to find, and there are some crumbs on GitHub, and it is kind of public knowledge, I guess, not official, but certainly it is out there. It's been shared a little bit around Discord and Twitter. Yes, we are working on an integration into Ledger. Unfortunate timing, but essentially what that would do is allow people who are holding ETH secured by Ledger to stake it in a more kind of integrated way, stake it with Rocket Pool rather than having to go and take that ETH and either deposit it or swap it for rETH. It would be like the similar to the, not only similar to the functionality for other staking protocols. I think there's probably only one that has an integration, but there's some other little bits and pieces planned too. So that work is continuing. There was some dev work that I think Kane had to do, and I believe that has to be audited. I'm not sure of the exact process. I don't think it's quite like a normal audit, certainly not like what we had for Atlas. The scope is much smaller, but it does involve checks from the Ledger team. I know that much. So in terms of a timeline, this one may not be quote unquote soon, but it is certainly quite advanced. And at least in terms of the actions required from the Rocket Pool side, pretty much everything has been ticked off. So yeah, it's looking good.
Okay, perfect. And then I did see, Mav, that you had a post in the protocol channel kind of talking about maybe the little bit about the roadmap ahead, especially with ODAO and a number of aspects of it. You want to talk a little bit about that and share that with the community?
Yeah, another topic that's kind of been floating around a little bit in Discord, on Twitter to a lesser extent, but some developments, I suppose you could say, behind the scenes that have been discussed informally, alluded to, and I think this recent post is kind of one of the first attempts to summarize it at a pretty high level. So there's kind of three main points regarding the ODAO. The first is that the team's actually been working on for a little while now, and we did discuss it in Denver and when we were all together for Ethember, about technical work that can be done to remove some of the ODAO's existing duties. So this is in tandem with some kind of wider technological updates that are necessary to make this change. And this is probably the one of the three areas that is in its earliest stages. So it is more in the kind of research and development than implementation phase, but essentially it means that with advancements in cryptographic technology, we may be able to execute some of these tasks in a different way, a more efficient way, a more decentralized way. So that's one area. Also probably worth pointing out that in that paragraph, it was mentioned that the intent is to replace all of the ODAO tasks if possible in the long run. Some may be more difficult than others, but at the very least, the tasks that have been identified for replacement are probably the ones that we would want to get out of the way sooner rather than later. So that's great. The second part is the ODAO constitution. So this is, it has essentially been drafted up already. I've seen an earlier version. It's not a 100-page document. It's very much to the point. It covers off all the main areas. Everyone can and should give it a read. This draft is going to be released soon. Don't have a date quite yet. It's obviously something that needs to be released when it's ready. But the process has been underway for a while. It's involved a few calls, and the constitution is looking good. The point of this is we need kind of a formalized, written down document to reference, and that will allow us to make well-informed decisions about the future of the ODAO going forwards, especially in this context of being able to remove many, if not all, of their tasks, and what a potential smaller, more streamlined, and eventually non-existent ODAO means for the protocol. So the third point is probably 12 or so hours ago now. Voting concluded for RPIP 19, and that was passed. With that, essentially the PDAO has signaled that they're wanting closer monitoring for the ODAO's duties. And I guess when I say signaled, it has been signaled informally for some time now. This is kind of a more official signaling, if you will. And with this, we're going to get to work on essentially making sure that that can happen. In the past, some of the tasks that have been completed by the ODAO only require a consensus, so that essentially means that not all parties have to complete these tasks. I guess in a way, kind of like the governance voting itself, right? Once you've met quorum, you're kind of good to go. Although at the same time, everyone that can have their say should have their say. But one area kind of related is some of the balance submissions. So this is a task that the ODAO completes to make sure that the protocol stays in consensus, kind of keeping track of everything and who's doing what in terms of the different nodes, and as the name implies, the different balances. So with the speed that Rocket Pool's been growing, the rate at which mini pools are added in particular, one or two of the ODAO members have reported they're getting some errors from time to time when trying to complete this task, and they're looking into ways to kind of streamline this process. I don't know, maybe Ken, at some point you might have some valuable input as to how to do this, certainly outside my area of expertise, but I suppose highlights a couple of things. First of all, the need to keep on top of ensuring that all these tasks are completed and completed accurately. So some of this monitoring will help with that. And second of all, really just the speed at which the protocol is growing. If you look at the deposit pool, it is the /deposit pool page on RocketScan. You'll see we've had pretty good, maybe not consistent, but definitely high deposits lately. Since our last call, we've had a couple of big days. There's an 11,000 one, 5,000, 4,000, 2,000. So they're still streaming in. And obviously, as these liquid staking deposits come in, it means that new mini pools can be spun up. So this is only going to get worse as far as the balance checking task for the ODAO. So something that is and should be sorted out relatively soon.
Yeah, I for one am very much looking forward to that better metric tracking and kind of life signal or heartbeat pulse to really track the ODAO nodes and so forth. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of it. And I've seen a lot of the rocket scientists kind of engage in the ODAO chat channel, trying to troubleshoot some of the interesting, I'll call it client features or client abnormalities in terms of how it works. And so I think they've actually been kind of enjoying a little bit of the oddities and the troubleshooting to try to understand what's going on. Maybe talk a little bit about, there's a proposed specification by Joe. He couldn't make it due to a family commitment here, but that talks about cheating. Can you share with the community a little bit about that?
For sure, and this is definitely one post. If you don't frequent the DAO governance forum very often, dao.rocketpool.net, you should definitely head over there to read this. It's about 6 days old, a post from Joe titled A Candidate Design for a Modernized Penalty System. And in short, one of the main things that Rocket Pool has to think about when you have a node operator, so they have one mini pool. Today they put up their 8 ETH and 2.4 ETH worth of RPL. They potentially could be earning some quite large lottery blocks, right, through Mav. Once they've joined the protocol, they are supposed to share these rewards with, of course, the liquid stakers. Potentially, if they're in the smoothing pool, they have to share with the smoothing pool too. And to make sure that this is being done correctly, it's a role for the ODAO, right, to identify and for the protocol to have a system in place to prevent or to penalize, to disincentivize this kind of cheating. It's unique to a liquid staking protocol like this, and it really affects how Rocket Pool can potentially scale in the future. If we're talking about going down to LEB4 one day, this is something that needs to be taken into consideration as well. So Joe's proposed design is that in the case of theft or cheating, some of the RPL is taken from that offending node's bond that they've put up, and it is put up for sale to offset what they've stolen. This is still a draft concept, open to a lot of feedback and review. And scrolling down the many replies already, there are some proposals. Actually, I think it's from you, Ken, is it? For example, talking about whether the ETH bond should be used in addition to the RPL bond. So there's a few things to think about. And also another notable point that you mentioned, and maybe someone else did further up there too, we should think ahead to potentially forced exits and what that means, and to make sure this penalty system is designed with that in mind. Forced exits obviously being the functionality that Rocket Pool could not only identify and penalize a node, but eject it from the protocol.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Joe asked is that we just, highlight it and really encourage people to read what he's proposed, give it some thought and comment on it, right? It seemed very much that Joe is wanting a lot more community input about how it should be structured and how the penalties should be assessed and designed.
Yep, and Joe also has Smart Node 1.9.4 coming out soon. The recent issues that you may be aware of regarding the lack of finality that has kind of influenced this Smart Node release. As I understand it, everyone's kind of running around, or everyone affected by it, running around, releasing patches, and what he's waiting on now is Nimbus in particular to release a version of their client that addresses this finality issue. So he was saying it should be tomorrow, a day or so away, and then not too long after that, 1.9.4. So that is, by the sound of things, coming quite soon.
Yeah. And so, Mav, as we kind of reach the end of the hour here, are there any other things we haven't covered that you feel is kind of important to share with the community about stuff that's coming down the pipe here, or big things that we didn't have a chance to discuss that you feel the community should know about?
Well, first of all, a couple of things have kind of come up in different ways. Ledger being one, the integration still on the way, potentially exposing Rocket Pool to a pretty large audience. Ave Emo has also come up with our question earlier. That is still on the way. That has a lot of potential too. Yeah, you may have seen in the IMC public discussion channel. If you keep an eye on the discussions there, well, I guess it's actually a thread, isn't it? Under the governance channel in Discord, from time to time you may get some ideas of protocols that are interested in collaborating with or integrating Rocket Pool. There were a couple in there recently that come to mind. They're looking to kind of build automated strategies involving rETH and DeFi that could potentially drive significant demand for liquid staking. So these efforts are still underway, and even though we've seen some pretty healthy deposits come through, as I mentioned before, including a day recently with 11,000 or more liquid staking deposits. Obviously, if we can get more, that would be ideal. So these efforts are still underway. One thing coming up to, I guess, it is a month post Atlas, isn't it? Is we want to make sure that the performance of the protocol is being reflected accurately. So lately there have been a couple of instances where companies that provide metrics or tracking in the industry haven't quite accurately reflected Rocket Pool's recent growth. So we've been working with them to help them identify and update their tracking. We want to make sure that everyone's aware of the great performance of the protocol recently. Also, kind of touched on this other point, there is an ongoing, if anything, growing interest in the Twitter Space guest slot, and I think there were 10 or so events listed in Discord. I think there's still one where we've got the TBC in front to be confirmed. The exact time of that call is, as it suggests, still to be confirmed, but the rest should be locked in by now. And there's still even one or two more that I have to add. We've got some panel discussions coming up. I think, from memory, Stakewise and some other protocols from the liquid staking industry going to be joining. Langers will be on a couple. I might do one, so it's certainly all go in there. And then for me, on a more personal note, I did have to get up relatively early for this call. Alarm went off before 5 a.m. I am a couple of hours apart from my usual time zone in New Zealand. And that is because I bought a one-way ticket to Australia. So we might have to update that dev time bot in Discord. Still trying to figure out.
Congratulations.
Sorry, go Ken.
I was going to say congratulations then.
Yeah, it's something that that kind of tends to happen. New Zealanders heading over the ditch, as we call it, a bit of water that separates the two countries. I lived in Sydney before, enjoyed that. I am in Rocket Pool's home state of Queensland. And we'll see exactly what happens, but it is a one-way ticket. So while some of these calls might be a little bit more difficult when it comes to the hour of the day and the time zone, at the very least, I am a little bit closer to the rest of the world, a little bit closer to some of these events that we're looking forward to attending later in the year, maybe into next year. But yeah.
Wow, lots of changes in there for it. And I did notice that on the community calls, it's really become kind of the hot thing to do is to get on the Rocket Pool community call. It looked like the deck was fully stacked coming up here in the next month. I thought it's going to be quite exciting to see all the different protocols come in and kind of illustrate their integrations with rETH.
Yeah, and that's certainly something that these spaces help to illustrate, whether or not you hold rETH or not, or are a node operator or not. Maybe you just have a bit of RPL sitting in a wallet. Maybe the guests that come on and the opportunities that are available aren't relevant to you, or maybe not all relevant to you. What should be obvious is the fact that Rocket Pool is getting quite a bit of attention, and people are wanting to build on top, interact Rocket Pool. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. Over the weekend, another little thing to add. From time to time, I'm pretty sure on these calls I talk about Lunar Crush. There are kind of social metrics tracking protocol, at least within the protocols I've seen. They're kind of crypto Web3 oriented. They do a pretty good job. They tend to cut out a lot of the spam posts that go on as well, mentioning projects and the cash tags there on Twitter. But yeah, over the weekend, Rocket Pool reached, I think it was number 5 in terms of how they rank protocols. That's out of everything out there. So pretty impressive. And essentially what it means is a lot of people are talking about Rocket Pool, engaging with content mentioning Rocket Pool. So yeah, a really good sign.
Well, excellent. And speaking of Langers, did you ever hear from him about any growth opportunities for Rocket Pool in terms of increasing the team, or has that subject not come up yet in the stand-up?
Was it yesterday or Monday? It did come up, and it was something along the lines of need to get that job description finished and sent out. Langers has been a little bit unwell recently. Between actually, a few of us have been not enough to kind of be off, but just enough that yeah, I guess making keeping up with the workload a little bit more challenging than usual. So yeah, he has had a couple of days under the weather. I poke him about it on stand up in 4 or so hours. Maybe he'll be on the chat on Friday. Yeah, definitely one of these things that is progressed from soon to very soon now.
Excellent. Yeah, I could fully relate to that, being under the weather a little bit. It's even hard just to follow Discord, yet alone try to do productive work and follow Discord. So I'll give him that. But yeah, it's I think we've covered all of the items on the agenda, and I don't see any questions in trading. So Mav, unless there is anything else, or Brad, that you'd like to share with the community, I think we can probably wrap it up.
Sounds good to me, and thanks for persevering, Ken, with your voice. Hopefully you're better soon, certainly for the next call. And we'll have a chat to everyone on the chit chat in just over 2 days' time. See you then.
Yeah, see you then. All right.